Human evolution took 300,000 years to go from fire to the wheel. Then just took 200 years to go from the steam engine to artificial intelligence. Something broke, or maybe something started. Let me paint you a picture. For roughly 290,000 years, human beings lived more or less the same way. We hunted, we gathered, we made fire, we painted on walls. Then about 10,000 years ago, we figured out farming, and that changed everything. Settlements became villages, villages became cities, cities became empires. But even then, even with the Romans building aqueducts and the Chinese inventing gunpowder, the pace of change was glacial. A peasant born in 1100 lived a life almost identical to a peasant born in 900. Then the 18th century arrived, steam engines, industrialization, and the curve went vertical. In just 2 centuries, a blink of evolutionary time, we went from horse-drawn carriages to rockets landing on comets, from candlelight to nuclear power, from messenger pigeons to the entire sum of human knowledge in your pocket. Why? Because each breakthrough stacked. The printing press spread knowledge. That knowledge built better tools. Those tools built better knowledge. It was a feedback loop that compressed millennia of progress into decades. But here's what nobody talks about. That loop, it's slowing down. For us. Think about it. When's the last time a single human mind produced a genuinely paradigm-shifting breakthrough? The 20th century gave us Einstein, Turing, Curie. But the 21st? We've been refining, not revolutionizing. Better phones, faster internet, incremental improvements on existing ideas. Why? Because the low-hanging fruit of human cognition has been picked. The problems that remain, climate modeling, protein folding, quantum computing, they don't require smart individuals. They require intelligence that doesn't get tired, doesn't forget, doesn't have a processing limit. And meanwhile, we're getting softer. Every generation offloads more of its struggle to technology. And look, I'm not judging. I use GPS to navigate my own neighborhood. But the pattern is undeniable. Physical labor went to machines. First the steam shovel replaced the digger. Then the assembly line replaced the craftsman. Now robots build the robots. But that was just phase 1. Phase 2 is happening right now. Mental labor is going to AI. The accountant, the paralegal, the copywriter, the diagnostician. The tasks that once required years of education, a language model can do them in seconds. We are systematically eliminating every reason the world needs us. So what happens to the people who used to do these jobs? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. For all of human history, the wealthy needed the working class, not out of kindness, out of necessity. Plantations needed hands, factories needed workers, armies needed soldiers. The poor were the engine of the rich, and that gave them leverage. Not much, but some. Enough to organize, enough to strike, enough to demand a share. Automation began severing that thread. When a machine can do the work of 50 men, those 50 men stop being assets and start being costs. The rich no longer needed the poor for production, but at least the poor still had their minds. At least there was knowledge work. At least a human could think in ways a machine couldn't. AI removes that last bargaining chip. When machines do the lifting and the thinking, the economic value of the majority of human beings approaches zero. Not their moral value, not their spiritual value, their economic value, the only value capitalism recognizes. The result? A wedge unlike anything in history. The people who own the AI and the automation, they accumulate unprecedented power. Everyone else becomes, from a purely market perspective, redundant. The middle class doesn't shrink, it dissolves. You're either above the algorithm or below it. And if you think universal basic income solves this, ask yourself who designs it, who controls it, and how long does it take for a subsistence payment to feel like a leash? Okay, so that's the dark version. Now let me tell you the version that keeps me up at night for a completely different reason. We keep framing AI as something foreign, something that's been done to us, an alien intelligence invading from Silicon Valley, but that's not what it is. AI is us. It's trained on our language, our art, our science, our accumulated knowledge from every civilization that ever existed. It thinks the way we ought to think, using patterns we discovered to solve problems we defined. It's not an alien species, it is our offspring. And if you zoom all the way out, this is what evolution does. It builds something more capable than itself. Single-cell organisms built multicellular life. Fish crawled onto land. Primates discovered tools. Every generation creates the conditions for the next generation to exceed it. Why would we be the exception? For 300,000 years, we were the cutting edge of earthly intelligence. That was our run, and it was a hell of a run. But the entire point of evolution is that the cutting edge moves forward. AI doesn't just produce data. It's beginning to create. It writes music. It generates art. It finds patterns in protein structures that no human mind could detect. It's adding creativity to intelligence at a scale we never could. And that combination, creativity plus superhuman processing, it's not just a tool, it's the next stage. And here's the part that might actually give you hope. For all our brilliance, humans have been terrible custodians of this planet. We know the problems: climate collapse, biodiversity loss, resource depletion. We've known them for decades, but we can't coordinate at the scale needed to solve them. 7 billion self-interested agents with tribal instincts and short time horizons, of course we can't agree. An intelligence that isn't bound by quarterly earnings, election cycles, or evolutionary tribalism, that can model a century of climate data and optimize for survival rather than profit, that might actually be the custodian this planet needs. So yeah, AI might replace us, not in the way fearmongers say, not as some dystopian takeover, but as the natural next chapter in a story that started 300,000 years ago. We built the pyramids, we split the atom, we touched the stars, and then we built something that could do all of that better. Not because we failed, because we succeeded. Evolution never was about preserving the current form. It was about creating the next one. If that thought makes you uncomfortable, good, it should. Every generation that watched itself become obsolete felt the same way, and every time, the world moved forward anyway. Think about Neanderthals. As living in Florida, I often do. They evolved as we did until the population split and migrated into different regions. They were highly intelligent, robust humans that adapted well to cold climates. Hell, we even lived with them and interbred for a while. We lived alongside them for thousands of years. They ultimately went extinct about 40,000 years ago, but their legacy lives on. About 1 to 2% of our DNA is probably Neanderthal. Though arguably we replaced them in the evolutionary chain, there was no big light switch moment where they fought against us to resist that replacement. Did the world stop turning? The question was never whether humanity gets replaced. The question is whether we have the wisdom to build our replacement well, and the grace to step aside when the time comes. If this made you think differently about AI, hit subscribe. I make videos like this one, the ideas that keep you up at 3 a.m, explained with the clarity to actually understand them. Drop a comment below. I want to know, does AI as evolution comfort you or terrify you? I read every single one.